guys, welcome to my channel. If you are new, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button and don't forget to hit that bell so that way you can be notified every time that I post. If you clicked on the video, then you are here because you are interested in how I got my rib taken out. Yes, I did have a rib removed. No, my rib was not this big. It was actually like the size of my finger. It actually looked like a velociraptor toe. It was not as scary as it sounds. It didn't happen in some freak accident. I was not in a car accident. I did not, get hit by an IED at war. I simply woke up one morning and my arm, I had a line where you can see my tan line. I had a line across my arm. I got out of the shower. I wiped the mirror. My arm was purple and it was swollen twice the size of my other arm. So what does any adult do at the age of 24 when something is wrong with them? They call their parents. I called my mom. I said, hey, something's wrong. I think, I don't know what's going on, but my arm is swollen and it's purple. She's like, you need to get over here right now. So I go to my mom's and she's like, we have to go to the hospital right now. My mom is a person who does not believe in going to hospitals for any reason unless something is seriously wrong. So for my mom to say we need to go, I just thought that she was overreacting because I was her kid and it was kind of a scary situation. Fast forward, I get to the ER, we walk in, it was cold outside, so I actually had a jacket on. We get to the ER, I'm handing the intake person my insurance card. She said, hey, what's your complaint? I take off my jacket so she can see my arm and she sees the line and that my arm is purple and swollen. I said, my arm just feels dead. It feels numb, like it's asleep. And I can just I can feel my heartbeat. I can feel throbbing. And so she gets on the phone immediately. She calls somebody. Somebody comes out and they come and get me and my mom and walk us back to my room. Mind you, usually when you get to the ER, you have to get your vitals taken. You have to give them your complaint. They have you go sit down and wait. They triage you. You have to sit there for like an hour before you even get called back. But nope, I bypassed all of that. I didn't even get vitals taken. They took me straight back to my room. As soon as I got to my room, there was a doctor waiting for me, not a nurse. There was a doctor waiting for me. She told me to take off my shirt and to stand facing the wall. So I'm facing the wall and I have my arms down by my side. She told me, she's telling me to hold them down to my side, lift them up, hold them up straight, hold them forward. And then I turn around and there had been like 3 or 4 more doctors that had walked in the room and everybody's just staring at me trying to figure out what is going on with me. So they put in for an x-ray and an ultrasound. So I think that I'm going to be waiting for a while. Next thing I know, x-ray comes in, they wheel me out. They're not letting me walk. So they wheel me out. I go to x-ray, I get my images, I come back. By the time I'm coming back, literally ultrasound is meeting us at my doorway. They literally do an exchange. So I leave the x-ray tech, I go to the ultrasound tech, they wheel me down to ultrasound. And this was when I start to see that it's actually getting way more serious than what I thought it was. He takes the ultrasound, he's running it up my arm. And if you know anything about ultrasounds, there's a blue and a red. You can see blue and red on the screen, and that is your intake and outtake of blood in your body. He gets to a certain point and all of a sudden it's just black. It's pure black. There's no color at all. And it's from about right here where my line is all the way up till about right where the tip of my scar is. And I said, hey, where's the blood flow? Is that a blood clot? And he said, oh, well, I can't really tell you anything. I can't diagnose. I have to send this up to the doctor. And of course, in my mind, I'm like, this is your job. You clearly went to school for this. You know that something is wrong. You're just not going to tell me because you're not the doctor. So my mom is there with me. We're walking back. I'm getting wheeled back. And as I'm getting wheeled back, she said, you have a pretty big blood clot. So we get back to the room. By the time I get back to the room, the doctor who's actually going to be overseeing me from here on out is actually waiting for me in my room. Mind you, it's only been about, I think I'd only been in the hospital for about maybe an hour and all of this had taken place. Usually you're in the ER for like 5-6 hours before you can even get to all 3 stages. And I'd only been there for about maybe an hour. And I'm back in there, the doctor's waiting for us. He sits me and my mom down and he basically said, you have what's called thoracic outlet syndrome. I don't know the technical term because it is like I don't know. Can you hear my daughter? So I had what was called thoracic outlet syndrome. What that means is there are spaces in between each of your ribs. Okay, they're called intercostal spaces. My first intercostal space is actually between my clavicle and my first rib. There's a vein that runs through it for everybody. It's not just me. I'm not some freak. It runs through everybody, right? So there's a rather large vein. Mind you, this is a very tiny space, so it's not like the vein is sitting right here. It's literally pressed in between your clavicle and your rib. Now, usually this is not an issue, but over time with repetitive motion, what happened was scar tissue built up and my vein went from being completely open to, over time, the scar tissue would slowly just start to close my vein until it eventually was just closed completely, to the point that hardly any, if any, blood was circulating into my arm. So he tells me after looking at the ultrasound and the x-ray that I have a 6.5-inch blood clot and it is super close to my heart and he has to go put a stent in immediately. So he wheels me out from my room into an operating room. They basically give me an epidural and then they put dye in my body. There's a huge screen on this side of me and he's working on this side, obviously, because it's my right arm. So I'm actually looking at the screen, watching him fish through my veins with like this needle and thread. He gets to a certain point, he tapes everything down. Then I have to stay in ICU for 24 hours because they have to monitor me, because if a chunk of the blood clot breaks off and goes to my heart, they have to be ready for what's called a code blue, which is basically, if you've watched any movies, it's where I go into cardiac arrest, because if you get a blood clot to your heart cannot function properly and it goes into cardiac arrest almost immediately. So I had to stay in ICU while they put the stent in, and basically the stent was putting in blood thinners directly on the blood clot rather than waiting slowly to give me an oral medication or an injectable. They had to get the blood clot dispersed immediately. He sent me home with 7 days worth of injectable blood thinners. So I had to inject it into my stomach just like a diabetic would inject insulin. I had to do it every morning and every night for 7 days straight. After those 7 days, I had a scheduled procedure where I had to go back in, and that is where he was going to remove my first rib. The reason he was removing my first rib is because, like I said, clavicle, first rib, vein. If all he did was put the stent in to break up the blood clot and didn't do anything else, it was going to happen again. And I was going to be back for the same thing. So what they do is they remove the first rib. So now my vein is running through, but my second rib basically is like down here, right? So there's nothing but space for my vein to basically live its best life in that space, and I'll never have to go back again. So while I'm getting wheeled in, I am headed into the surgery room or the operating room, and I lean over to the doctor and I said, "Can I please keep my rib?" "What? Can I keep my rib? I think it's pretty cool." Actually, that's biohazard. I don't think that we're allowed to give that to you. We have to dispose of it properly. I'm like, yeah, well, it's my rib. I'm not asking for somebody else's bone or kidney or liver or heart or anything. I'm asking for what's mine anyway. It belongs to me. It came out of my body. Can I have it back? I think it's cool. So of course, like at the time, he's like, well, we'll see what we can do, but probably not. So I'm kind of bummed. The surgery took about 4.5 hours. By the time that I'm done with surgery, I'm back in the room. The anesthesia is wearing off. My mom, again, was the only one who took me there. By the time I'm waking up, this is 7 days later, obviously after I get out of surgery, my dad and stepmom are there, my uncle's there, my daughter's there. Everybody's in the room. It's super chaotic. And I look over and there's a specimen jar, like kind of what you give a urine sample for at the doctor's office. There's a specimen jar and there's something floating in it. I'm like, what the heck is that? My mom's like, oh, the doctor came in and pretty much slid this to me when they were wheeling you in the room, and it is your rib. Mind you, up until this point, I thought that I was gonna get a rib like this big. No, it was literally the size of my index finger. It was kind of curved. If you've seen Jurassic Park, the original one, when the kids are like tucked and they're hiding because the velociraptors are in the kitchen and they're clicking their toes, like my first rib, your first rib, everybody's first ribs, looks like a little velociraptor toe when it's like clicking its nail. That's what it looked like. So that is my story in a nutshell, because I actually filmed this, I just filmed this and I just edited it and everything else, but I'm a new YouTuber, which guess what that means? I cannot exceed 15 minutes, and my other story was 23 minutes, and it was a lot more comical, but we're at 10 minutes and I wanted to cram all of the pertinent information in as fast as I could. Okay, so now that it's at the very end, I can actually answer some in-depth questions. I went to bed, everything was fine. I woke up and my arm was purple and twice its size. When the doctor explained to me, I said, how could I have ever known that I had this? Did I miss any signs? He said, no. This is usually relevant between women between the ages of 18 and 24. And it is caused, it's like a freak accident type of thing, right? It's a freak thing. There's no past medical history. It's not hereditary. It just happens. And so he said, you will know that something is wrong. The only indication that you will get is between 12 to 18 hours in the time that everything starts happening. From the time that the blood clot starts to form, by that 18th hour, you will be in the hospital because you will know that something is not right. You will not be able to move your arm. It will be swollen. Your fingers will be swollen. You'll feel your heartbeat in your arm. Like, you will know that something is severely wrong, and you will be at the ER within 18 hours. He said, other than that, there's no way for us to ever know that something is wrong, because we're not just going to send you for a random ultrasound before we know something's wrong with you. It's actually a rather new procedure. Now, this happened about 5 years ago, so it's actually a rather new procedure, but the doctor who performed it on me, he's actually based in my city, and he is the only one in my region. Like, he was on a board of he was on a board of doctors who came up with this procedure, right? So it's not like this is some procedure that they've been doing for years. By the time that I had got to him, he hadn't even had 100 cases yet, right? This was, I mean, he hadn't done 100 procedures of taking out the rib. Usually what they would do is they would just remove the blood clot, keep the stent in, and hope for the best. And then they knew eventually it would happen again. The person would have to go back to the ER, get another stent put in, have the blood clot removed, and it was going to be a life thing. Like, every so often you'd have to go back and get it fixed. But with this new procedure where he removes my first rib, I am now free to do whatever. The likelihood of it happening in my left arm is very slim to none. The likelihood of it happening in both arms at the same time is even more slim to none. It's a very small percentage of women that get this. I guess there's some guys that can get it, but he told me it's primarily in women. It is called thoracic outlet syndrome. If for any reason you think that you may have this, or you have been told by a doctor that you have this, I will honestly say that I live in Indianapolis, and if you have questions, you should reach out to St. Vincent Medical Hospital. It's actually attached to Peyton Manning Children's Hospital, which is the football player for the Colts. That is the hospital that is attached to, in case you are confused. Reach out to St. Vincent's and ask for the heart doctor and tell them what's going on. They will be able to get you to the right doctor. I cannot remember his name for the life of me. Yeah, and just reach out to St. Vincent's and they should be able to help you. I'm pretty sure this has spread, and they've probably taught a lot more doctors in other areas of the country and around the world. But when I got it done, it was very new, and it was only being done in Indianapolis and I think one other state in the nation. But if you guys have any questions, like, please feel free to comment down below. I would love to answer any further questions that you guys have. I'm reaching my 14-minute mark and I still got to put my intro in. So I will see you guys in my next video. If you're dealing with this, it's going to be okay. Don't freak out. It's nothing to worry about. I look forward to seeing you guys again in my next video, and I will see you later. Bye.